That's what make things happen, and we need more collaboration in territory. We need more partnership. So, Sheila, if anybody wants to reach out to you to partner for any future projects,
Correct. Yeah. Again, I'm at the Division of Virgin Islands Cultural Education, and if you call the general line at VIDE, they will be able to patch you to me. And again, I show up to a lot of
and
people's events.
you're all around the communities. You
Yeah,
can run into
yeah.
Shalana everywhere. We
Just let
run
me
into each
know
other all the
all the
time.
time. I don't pretend to know everything on this journey, for life, on learning more aspects. And as you were saying, Gertie, I just remembered that there was a Gertie family that used to, from New York, and I wonder if your teacher was related to them because they used to bring David Hamilton Jackson's newspaper to New York because there was a Virgin Islands um, I would say community group in New York of people who had transitioned from St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, to New York. So they had a whole like Virgin Islands society, and they were the persons who helped Casper Holstein and so forth to lobby. To lobby the government to give us citizenship. So it's not just like, these persons that we're calling out their name, Rachel Francis and David Hamilton Jackson. There's like a whole community around it. So that's why this is called David Hamilton Jackson and Alawi, because they have so many people that help to propel where we are now and who we are. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, just hearing you, I'm inspired, and thank you for being an inspiration to so many of us.
And it's really beyond the three of us also, too. It's the student exhibit. That's also the title, the key part of D. Hamilton Jackson's Aloe student exhibit.
Yeah, yes.
I'm really excited to come to the gallery tomorrow, and I'm going to pitch this out to the community. Please come out and support our students. Parents, if you know your son, your daughter is enrolled in Miss Lynch's English class over at St. Croix Educational Complex, please come out and support your children.
And just bring your neighbor, bring your niece, bring your nephew. Grandparents, bring your grandchildren. We know sometimes the parents might be busy, but grandparents come out. This is a community event, and maybe your child, their exhibit is not there, but this could be an inspiration so that next year they could be more involved and participate in others, and that they can learn. So sometimes we talk about ain't got nothing going on in the Virgin Islands. Ain't got nothing going on St. Croix.
Many things going on here in St. Croix.
And we have a lot of things that are happening on St. Croix that are also family oriented, that are educational, that are necessary, and so come out. Just try to investigate what's happening. And this is one. You have one tomorrow. For you to come out with your family. So tell us again what time and where.
Okay, so our opening ceremony and, even persons who are in Mrs. Lynch's class, we will provide from 1 to 2. We'll be giving, our thank yous, and our sponsor this year, Ernest of the Virgin Islands Consortium, really stepped up for our children, and he will be giving out the monetary awards to the students in first, second, and third places in their respective genre that they turned in work. And then from 1 to 2, we transition to actual programming. So we have early learners programming from ages 5 to 11 with Miss Maria Stiles.
So those that are from 5 to 11 can come around that time?
Yes, 5 to 11. And then it is from 2 to 3, we have the Virgin Islands Good Food Coalition, again for ages 5 to 11. They will be stewarding conversations with young people and art projects for agriculture, which we know David Hamilton Jackson was fought for all those people who were laboring on agricultural fields. And then from 3 to 4, we're going to our older students and adults. Miss Saida Carter, who is also an educator and the leader of Act Out Ensemble, she will have how do you use theater to express yourself.
And that's another awesome teacher to have to mention that,
So, and then from 4 to 5, again, we'll be closing out the project, and we'll be doing a walking tour of Christian Town, which the Hamilton Jackson resided on.
So come with comfortable shoes.
Correct, comfortable shoes. And the Society of Virgin Islands Historians has just signed on to also be with us on that tour, so they could give us more context about Christian Town and how the Free Press was born there.
Beautiful. So what would you say, the message that you hope this generation of students and their parents take away from this event?
I'll let Miss Cleon answer that.
Shalana, thank you for putting me on the spot.
The takeaway, yeah. What's
I
the
would
takeaway?
want our students to take away a sense of pride. Being a Virgin Islander is a beautiful thing, right? And I think for the most part, we have become so Americanized that we've lost our sense of culture and identity. And in doing these projects, it kind of, to me, it brings back that essence, that rebellious spirit, of being a Virgin Islander, So I really would want them to take away the essence. Let's get back to the roots.
Beautiful.
I want to also take the opportunity to thank Ernest because initially when the competition went out, there wasn't any monetary fees or prizes attached to it, and the students were just doing it. And when it was
Try
posted,
to stick into
I'm sorry, when it was
talk into the
posted,
mic, yeah.
and I told the students, hey, these are the prizes. My students went back to the drawing board to make sure that every T was crossed, every I was dot. Like, yeah, Miss Lynch, I win in this thing, and just thank you. I love when the community come out and give back to our students. Thank you so much, Ernest.
That partnership is
Yeah,
important.
partnership.
Sonia, what would you want the parents and students to take away?
Continuous pride in their work, for parents to take pride in what their children do, and for children to take pride in what they do. The Virgin Islands is a place to have a lot of pride in. It has a lot of history. I think students and adult individuals don't know enough about these islands. But I think there's stewards on the island who are pushing. The island is in a renaissance, I have to say. These three islands, believe it or not, it's in an art renaissance. It's in an environmental renaissance. There's a lot happening. So I'm going to go back to your question. You're about the takeaway, to continue to be in the renaissance of what's hitting people now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Shalana, we have to hear from you.
Me? Okay. No, I'm just going to always advocate for, I believe in being a global citizen, but we have to fill you up with enough pride of who you are and the space that you steward to be able to give back to the world. So how are we as Antillean people, making sure we have enough history and culture that we're able to be part of West Indian conversations. You know that right now there's so much going on in Barbados, in Bahamas, and what they're asking colonial structural framework for restitution, and how do our students be able to ask for those things or even know their equity when they go out into the world. And my job and that I get the pleasure to do is to fill them up enough pride and information that they are good human beings first. Yes.
I like that. And as we close off, as we only have a few minutes, 4 minutes available, what does Liberty Day, and, for some Liberty Day, the Hamilton Jackson Day, Bull and Bread Day, Labor Day, or so many things that are called, what does it mean to you? So who wants, personally, what does it mean to you? So who wants to start? Ms. Lynch.
All right, hailing from Grove.
Yes. The Mecca.
Yes, the Mecca. Liberty Day is a big thing for us. Okay, the statue is in the park in Grove, and we're infamous for our bull and bread. So it goes back to pride, and listening to these ladies on the platform. That's what I took away from everything you guys said. Virgin Islands pride. So I'm going to stick with my Virgin Islands pride and say that is essentially what it is for me.
And you heard it there from an ambassador from the Mecca.
Place in a house. Alawi.
Alawi.
Sonia?
I have to say Virgin Islanders kind of sweep me up. I wasn't born here.
Yes.
I was born in Guyana. Oh. But Virgin Islanders light a fire in me. And I would have to say I am also picking up a torch. So I am picking up a torch that takes me in a new path of freedom.
Beautiful, beautiful. Shalana, we have 1 minute to
Just
close.
Alawi. I gonna always say Alawi is more than Reverend Hamilton Jackson. Is all the people that he helped give equity to. Alawi.
Virgin Islands
Alawi.
Parade.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And guys, you heard it today.
Thank
So
you.
please come out tomorrow
Cane Roots in
Cane
Christian
Roots?
Set on Company Street.
at what time?
It starts at 12 and all the activities it ends at 5.
Ends at 5. So come out with your family. A good night, a good afternoon to be able to enjoy with family and friends and to learn.
Yeah.
I'm with an open mind to learn and just be
Yes.
filled through the work of our students. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being here. And this has been the first section of this program, Analyze This. So we're going to take a break and we'll be back with our last hour and our hosts that we will be having Brian Walden, Director of VI Energize, and Carl Fleming, the Executive Director of Virgin Islands Energy Office. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Sure.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters. The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
Good morning, and welcome to Analyze This. This is the second session of Analyze This on WTJX FM 93.1, your NPR station here in the Virgin Islands. And I am your guest host, former Senator Samuel Carrión, filling in for Neville James. And Neville will be back on Wednesday. But today, we just ended a beautiful first hour session with Director Shalana Brown, and she was accompanied by two beautiful ladies, which was Sonia Dean and also Miss Lynch. So we had a great conversation. And now I'm honored to have with me this morning Mr. Brian Walden, who is the director of VI Energize.
Correct.
Correct? Good. From WAVA. And also we have Director Kyle Fleming, who, of course, is Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Energy Office. And good morning to both of you, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good, good. How about yourself?
Doing well. Doing
Good,
well. Happy
good.
Friday.
Happy Friday to you, too. And Director Fleming, tell us a bit about yourself for those that maybe don't know you
Yeah.
and your role in the VA Energy Office.
Perfect. No problem. My name is, again, Kyle Fleming. I'm the director of the Energy Office, now going on, I guess this is going into year 7, or about to complete year 7, being the director at the Energy Office. Prior to that role, I actually worked with the gentleman over to my right here at Pro Solar for a few years. But before at the top, or prior to that, I actually was doing grad school and working stateside. So kind of worked through the energy space for over the last decade. Kind of transitioned from the startup tech world of energy storage, actual manufacturing, to energy storage deployment, to now a lot more energy storage and renewable energy program and policy development through the Energy Office. So kind of run a spectrum across the space, and continuing to bring a number of different programs and priorities forward under the Bryan administration, which has been, we've had a bit of a roller coaster of funding availability as well as clawbacks, but we've been driving forward on a number of, I think, pretty critical initiatives on the renewable energy and energy efficiency, as well as transportation electrification front out of the Energy Office.
Beautiful, and we'll be digging a little bit into some of that work that you have been doing. But we also have Brian Walden, who is the director of the VI Energize. I'm sure, I hope I'm getting it right?
Close enough, man.
Close enough, okay.
Energize is the slightly shortened form.
Okay.
It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Got you. So tell us a bit more about yourself and your role there.
Excellent. Good morning.
Good morning.
The VI Energize department was reactivated with the assistance of Director Fleming out of the Energy Office. It is a grant-funded position, and this iteration, because VI Energize did exist back during the American Reinvestment Recovery Act funding that started around 2009, 2010. After the expiration of the net metering enrollment, the VI Energize department kind of drifted away, and obviously through the efforts of the Energy Office, renewable energy program started to flourish again, and it was envisioned that we really needed to have this embedded within the utilities operations. And so kind of as an acknowledgement that distributed resources, solar energy, battery technology, et cetera, is really now where it's a huge portion of the portfolio of the utility. And so operating programs and working within that space with other industry representatives is becoming increasingly important. So the VI Energize role is the acknowledgement of that. And we're getting the net energy billing program reorganized and rolled back out. And so we're really looking forward to a lot of momentum and continuing, even with a slight sea change within the federal administration's perspective.
Beautiful, because we know there's a lot of things has been happening, a lot of change has been happening. But let's start by talking a bit. What exactly is a Power Energy Initiative? I know that's something that we saw an article that came out, recently, with regards to 1.3 million in subgrant, and how does that fit into the broader energy goals for the Virgin Islands?
Yeah, so I think specific to the subgrant activity is actually included the funding for the VI Energize program in that. So the Energy Office has been, over the Biden administration, we received a plethora of funding, and one of the mechanisms for trying to expedite the deployment and mobilization of those funds was trying to take the full administration, so in terms of like the Energy Office being responsible for every transaction, every project, like kind of managing the entire life cycle of every activity under our funding, we've actually been strategically in multiple areas, actually sub-granting those funds to other entities. So, for example, we sub-granted about $540,000 to the utility to recapitalize the Energize program. We sub-granted about $500,000 to Metro Motors to so that they can start integrating service and support for electric vehicles into their dealership, so that way they can provide that critical resource of support as more and more electric vehicle adoption is brought online in the territory. And additionally, we've had a sub-grant for a little over $200,000 to the St. Joseph and St. Anne's Catholic churches to deploy solar on two of their churches as a pilot program for some future community-based organization grant opportunities that we're rolling out. So in those scenarios, the Energy Office received those funds, but we've actually essentially granted those funds to another entity to actually be the implementer. So in WAPA's instance, they've stood up the Energize program, have been hiring and conducting the duties of that entity with those funds. Metro Motors is going out and buying the equipment, equipping themselves for serviceability there. And so we're not the ones going through every one of those transactions. We kind of give them a lump sum of funds for them to go out and execute. And that takes a lot of the effort and kind of obligation off of our back, but still ensures that the intended outcome is realized. And that's been one of our methods of trying to, again, streamline the mobilization of funds in this environment where, as we can see, we just had a significant clawback of federal funds about 2 months ago. And, it's very clear that the longer we sit on resources in this very kind of volatile
environment,
let's
just call it that.
It's prudent to try and
move as fast as you can.
Of course, yeah.
But of course, you have regulations, you have guidelines. Yeah. Sometimes the public believe that it's like snapping your fingers.
Yeah.
They see an article comes out. You've been granted millions, and okay. And sometimes they don't understand how that translates to how they're going to be benefited and the time frames and all the legalities that are included within, stipulations within that, those fundings. So it's important that you kind of share a little bit about that. So, and I'm hearing something that I heard in the first program, which is partnership and how important partnership is. You can't do it all by yourself. The Energy Office, tell us a bit about the size of your office, the staff and so forth.
Yeah, so we've grown a little bit in the 7 years that I've been there. I think when I came in, there was about 8 employees. We're up to about 15. Currently, we're actually onboarding 2 more staff next week. And, a lot of the growth has been in terms of trying to insert champions of different programs. So, we went from about a $2 million budget when we started. We've got about 100 and, now about 100, a little over 100 million in management right now.
That's a huge change.
Massive, yeah.
Massive.
And I mean, we definitely didn't, just being able to staff up accordingly, again, as well as mobilizing funds in strategic directions has helped as well. But so we've grown, not too big because we don't, ultimately we don't want to, for example, once funds do expire, because there are finite, limits on the actual funding and, grant period. So you don't want to end up being overstaffed and then having to do any kind of major changes there. So been strategic in growing where, growing more like divisions of like kind of champions and then growing from there.
Beautiful. And so, Director Walden, how does your division then play a role in all of this?
So we're the implementation arm, but we're also acknowledging, like I say, within the utility, that these are a bigger and bigger portion of the portfolio. This is the evolution of the utility model. One of the examples would be the advanced metering infrastructure. The first go around showed the potential promise, but there was an unfortunate defect within one specific component that really impacted and negatively impacted that. Not to mention 2 Cat 5 hurricanes. So, but within that, with the reinitiation of that program, with the new meter infrastructure, et cetera, it's going to improve the quality of the building and the amount of billing, and it's going to improve the quality of the data that we're able to get and then manage that resource, whether it be a distributed resource or whether it be a centralized resource coming out of the plant. And so, when you look at the amount of solar that exists on St. Croix now, that's a tremendous impact. And there was recently another battery lease signed in order to increase the capacity. Specifically for the St. Thomas, the desire is also on St. Croix through the microgrid initiative, is to really increase that capacity. And when you look at the data, and one of the things that Director Fleming, in part of the planning committee, I believe, was initiating was, looking at a financial breakdown, a cost analysis, a little cost-benefit analysis. And while we were having this discussion, like a little light bulb goes off, wait a minute, we're going to be able to shut that turbine all the way down. Like, that's huge.
That is huge.
And when you talk about, one of the highest impact, the highest costs within overhead of the utility is fuel, being able to trim that directly address that is exponentially beneficial. So working with hand in hand with the initiatives and the policy, the Energy Office is looking forward. They're trying to develop the strategies and the programs that are in the energy space, make them available to the public, and then working with the utility in order for the utility to implement these pieces, to actually make them a reality. Kai was talking about a champion. I'm the champion in the utility. I'm the guy that says, hey, look at this potential. But I don't want to be dismissive in the sense of that it kind of existed in the past, and it has through other initiatives, whether it be the solar farms, et cetera. But now when we have a discussion, whether it be on something really innovative like the VPP program, the COO is sitting there. The director of Energize is sitting there. It's understood that within the utility, this is a part of the framework. It's not an add-on. It's
Beautiful.
not secondary.
You're at the table
It's ingrained. It's ingrained.
Well, I think 20 years ago, if you think about the Virgin Islands energy landscape, right? It was really Richmond and Harley, right? That was before even the uptick of net metering really took off and started seeing the solar systems on commercial and residential roofs start going off the microgrids at different commercial and industrial facilities across the territory. But here we are today, and I mean the landscape is totally different. Like there's more to this energy mix than just what happens in Harley and Richmond. And I think ultimately, being able to scale the evolution of those champions that are also thinking about how much that space has changed and making it more than just like a disparate network of assets. Like how do they all work together? That's really kind of what's been.
Not something isolated pocket here and there, but the interconnection of it all. And Director Walden mentioned something about benefits, and that's a question I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the public have. How does this grant translate into tangible benefits for Virgin Islanders? We're talking about lower energy costs, improved reliability, new renewable installations. I think you shared a little bit about it, but what are the benefits that Virgin Islanders could see, or as a whole? Because sometimes you want to see individual benefit, but then how does it benefit maybe as a whole?
Right. Well, I want to jump in on that one because number one, we all know what we desire, right? We're all looking ultimately for, number one, greater reliability. That's paramount. That's the first thing that we're shooting for. That's a requirement. The second piece is cost reduction. But I also need to back up all the way and go information. We need to be the information for everyone. We need to acknowledge what difficulties we're experiencing because we all experience it. We're all living through it on a day-to-day basis. I think a real tangible example is we had an outage on St. Thomas, and the hospital had to run on their generator, and it's got an undervoltage issue. But they're being rebuilt, so they don't really want to address the generator at the moment. And we currently have a grant awarded to put a really large battery there. We're waiting for the Office of Insular Affairs to give us the final authorization to proceed. And while we were there, 2 of the senior leadership brought family members to the hospital, but could not get a CAT scan because of the undervoltage. So there's that direct correlation. There's that direct experience. So then I sit down and I fire off an email to Office of Insular Affairs and the Army Corps saying, this is a direct impact to our community. Look what's going on. Is there anything we can do to expedite this process? So it's felt, it's perceived at all levels. So first thing we need to do is we need to start to really involve the community more in a greater amount of education, whether it be, let's put surge protectors on. Because of our environment, we started this conversation with, because of our environment, People are going to hit telephone poles. We're going to have lightning storms that are going to drift through. We're going to have severe weather. All of those pieces together are going to make for instability or difficulties within our distribution system. So being able to move that energy around, we have a lightning strike in one area, we can isolate that remotely, automatically, pull energy from another sector or discharge from a battery into that area. This gives us greater control. We're bumping up the reliability. And then we can start talking about, well, wait a minute, we're cutting way back on our fuel now. What does that directly translate into savings?
So, well, I was going to say, I think part of what's so unique about like the current environment we live in, both from the funding that that has come into the territory, as well as just the advent of technology innovations that has made solutions like batteries, both at the residential and commercial and utility level scale, far more accessible and then also affordable. It means that we can start actually looking at these. Now we can actually really not just like hypothetically think, wow, this would be a great solution. There's a lot more tangibility to, the funding that's out there to actually, hey, let's invest in this solution. Let's put this in play. And we don't have to just kind of sit in this like hopeful, space of being able to realize the benefits of the different type of distributed energy solutions that are out there. And I think that's what's made this role very exciting, and again, that continued collaboration between the energy office and the utility much more exciting, because we're not just in the room just talking about the possibilities. We're actually going through the motions of putting these projects on the ground, right? Like, getting that approval to proceed on a hospital project means that once that goes, we'll be moving through the procurement process. There'll be, construction will soon to follow that, and like the actual benefits are going to be realized within a not just like the distant future, but in the near term. And that's, I think, where, I know we do have in these kind of forums, we talk about what's happening, but there is a lot of actual tangible progress being made, even on the microgrid front. We're currently in the contracting phase to install a solar and battery microgrid actually at the WTJX Mountaintop Tower site in St. Thomas. Actually, Mr. Walden joined us on the site visit with the prospective vendors for that project. And, that's another one that's going to be in play and installed in the next, few months. And we're talking about bringing reliability to critical infrastructure.
Nice. So we're going to take a break on that one. We'll come back and discuss a bit more. You're here and analyze this. Thank you very much. We'll be right back after this break. Well, if you are tuning in for the first time, good morning to you once again. This is Analyze This, and on WTJX 93.1 FM, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. And this is your host guest, former Senator Samuel Carrión, standing in, filling in for Neville James, who is out. And with me this morning, we have Director Walden, and we also have Executive Director Fleming, Kyle Fleming, with us here this morning and talking about a little bit about what is going on in the VI Energy Office and as a whole in the territory. So we're having a little bit discussion here of the improvements and of course, challenges are always there. They will always come. Director, tell us a bit more of some of the projects coming up and some of the work that the office is doing.
Yeah, so continuing that vein of pushing for distributed energy, especially in the form of solar and battery. One of the funds that we're actually administering is a CBDG disaster recovery electric grid program called the Community Electrical Innovations Program. And the Energy Office over the last few months we fielded at an application window where we reached out to community-based organizations across the territories, everything from homeless shelters, food banks or soup kitchens, daycares, even some educational institutions that serve a lot of the low to moderate income demographics across the territory in different forms, some directly, some indirectly. For example, like daycares serve in a very unique way by creating an outlet for parents to have a safe space for their children while they're working and supporting their households. And the target of this program specifically is to bolster resiliency for critical infrastructure such as those community-based organizations, ensuring that they can remain functional, whether it be in blue sky condition outages or disaster outages, being able to couple a solar and battery system at those sites so that way they're able to continue to deliver their services is a key part of the solution that we're bringing forward. So we went through a pretty rigorous evaluation of the applications we received. We finalized and approved 29 in total. We're currently working through the first wave of sites, which is actually 9 daycares and Head Starts across the territory, from St. John, St. Thomas, including St. John and St. Croix. And at this stage, we're going through the scoping of each site. So essentially, preliminary designs of the type of system sizes that they would need, and then ultimately going to be going out to RFP for a vendor to support the installations. And once those systems are done, we're targeting to a minimum of ensuring at least 50% savings on their current utility obligations, as well as being able to incorporate robust energy resiliency through the battery systems that are going to be included. So the target there would be for these daycares, middle of the day, if the power were to go out, no one's having to call parents to come and pick up their kids. They're able to continue their operation, continue to provide that safe space for parents to feel secure with and not disrupt a parent's day. And so that's looking at that, how we support those needs is by putting the infrastructure, using the technology that's available to ensure that they continue their operations. Yes, a generator could provide the same support in a way, but that's requiring fuel, that's requiring maintenance. We all know the history of those challenges, and while it's fine to have a secondary solution, we always want to make sure that there's a primary renewable alternative that's also available to critical infrastructure. And that's a program that we're really excited to continue to move forward. Once we finish the daycares, we're moving into we have some of our elderly care facilities as well that are a part of that approval of applications, and then finally into the larger educational institutions. So we're trying to approach it in tiers, to kind of picking the lowest hanging fruit, the simple projects, and then moving up in difficulty so that way we can fast track again that implementation. Instead of waiting to spend all the money at once, we're breaking it into chunks so that way we're constantly progressing on rolling out those funds for those critical solar and battery systems across the territory.
That's awesome. So, and I'm glad that you took the time to come here today, because it's important for the public to hear what is happening, what programs, initiatives are available, what your office is doing, what type of services you guys are providing. Because sometimes, you hear in the community saying, nothing is happening, that nothing is going on. But there is work being done, and we are in that transformation stage. If anyone is interested, like you say, a daycare center or someone, what would be the process then? How?
Yeah, so right now the current application window is closed, but we
Okay.
will be, as we move through this phase of applications, once we essentially close out, we are anticipating to open up another wave of applications. We were pretty aggressive in the marketing, but you're never going to reach everyone.
Yeah, it happens.
And so, but we want to make sure we're advancing the ones that we already have in queue. But then subsequent to that, so I would say probably the beginning of next year, we'd be looking to reopen for the next wave of applications.
Okay.
And then we'll also have some word of mouth from the people who've already successfully navigated the process to then help even bring more similar organizations into the fold of awareness. But
Yeah, because I know in some regions they also have other nonprofit organizations and sometimes churches too.
Yep.
That have been received sub grants, have been supported by the energy office within their regions because of their role within the community,
Right.
in a moment of disaster or so forth. So we're hoping to hear some more of those initiatives coming along. Now, Mr. Walden, from your experience in the energy field, how does the Virgin Islands compare to other regions and advancing towards a more sustainable energy independence?
So the Virgin Islands actually is fairly unique in the sense of we're the early adopters. We kind of are on the bleeding edge of solar and battery storage. 15 years ago, solar and battery storage were, agrarian, really far remote locations, etc. And then, you had grid-tied inverters that came on the scene that really opened up the access. And then basically about 2 months before Irma, Tesla brought out the Powerwall 2. And the Powerwall 2 was the closest to the plug-and-play home battery storage that you could find on the market that had enough output capacity to really supply a small home. And the advent of that technology, along with a reasonable price point, don't get me wrong, it's really expensive no matter how you slice it. But all of a sudden, you started to see the change in the dynamic. Now, we were driven by a sense of urgency and a sense of necessity. And what ended up happening is because of that, and oddly enough, it was because Maria rolled over Puerto Rico. Elon Musk, for better or for worse, indicated that this was a humanitarian support crisis and they needed to have a unlimited supply of Powerwalls to the Caribbean. And that jump-started it. That kicked it off and it allowed an explosion of home battery and storage. In the Virgin Islands, we don't think of solar as just panels on the roof. It's solar with batteries, always. And that's very future-proofing in mentality.
And I could say, I think one of the, I call it the perfect storm, kind of pun intended, in that 2017 period of that necessity being born by literally having 4 months of outages and the advent of, as you said, more modular, more kind of standard installations. We went from, prior to 2017, your typical battery would be like a flooded lead acid, like basically your car, a bank of car batteries in people's homes that needed.
Yeah, you see them stack up.
Yeah, you'd have to have a dedicated room for them. If you didn't, you couldn't put them outside. Like, the power really, I think that was definitely the inflection point of especially the residential and, small scale commercial distributed energy transition for the territory. I think also where we've seen, because even stateside now, yes, you're seeing a little bit more of the battery uptick and kind of people coupling batteries to solar systems when there's maybe different type of programs that values or monetizes the battery, but the kind of standard package of solar and battery, I agree fully that was something that was normalized in the Virgin Islands and maybe in some parts Puerto Rico as well too, far earlier than I think a lot of other areas. I think the other area that also pushed it was the sunset of the net metering program in 2017, which stopped giving one-to-one credit for your solar export. And then the transition to the initial net billing program also created not just a resiliency benefit for the battery, but actually like an economic benefit, because now you could actually use your battery not just for the resiliency but to also maximize your savings. So that perfect storm really did kind of create just like a catalyst for how many batteries do you think we have in the Virgin Islands now today?
4,000 roughly.
Yeah.
Wow.
On a per capita basis, I assure you, even Puerto Rico, we probably are beating that. I mean, because there's only 55,000 customers in the WAPA mix. So,
and it was that actually the net metering program and incentivizing at the retail rate of electricity being so high is why the groundwork was laid for batteries to begin with. That was why the vendors were looking at this opportunity before the necessity hit. And so those vendor relationships were just starting. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a minute, doors thrown open. And COVID only poured fuel on the fire, because now it became, well, I can work anywhere. And if I can work anywhere, I just have to make sure I have power.
right.
So, if you add a Starlink into that, Starlink, you got your solar, your battery.
Start connecting.
If you got a desal plant at your house, you're autonomous.
Well, see, I think one of the you touched on it earlier, because now we have this vast network of batteries that has been kind of catalyzed by these different drivers. But now we're in a space where, if you think about it, I think there was maybe 2015, 2016, there was still some taboo around distributed energy from the utility standpoint, where it was like, oh, this is something that we have to limit the adoption. People who are adopting solar are putting additional strain on other parts of the people who don't have solar, and so it started to become kind of a almost a social challenge that then the utility was extending. Now again, I think this conversation today is a testament that those taboos are gone, right? It's now looking at how do these resources actually support the grid. The virtual power plant is something that I've talked about on this show with Neville in the past, and something we are actually getting ready to launch, which is now taking this network of batteries, these 3,000-4,000 batteries that are out there, and not just having them be benefits to the customers or the people who install them, but now how do we potentially tap into those batteries to serve the larger grid as a whole, improve resiliency of the entire grid. And that's another way, and again, which what was once viewed as a detriment to the utility operation, or perceived to be a detriment, is now actively being explored as, again, how this could actually be a mutual and more symbiotic benefit to the entire system as a whole. And I think that's, again, a testament of how this evolution has gone from being this very centralized lens of power systems to now this really dynamic, distributed network that, again, having an internal champion in the utility, I think is critical for us to make sure we're maximizing those benefits. And I think that's one of the key collaborations that hoping to kind of grow in other areas as well, because it certainly pays dividends in being able to materialize a lot of things that we talked about.
And the battery is the active ingredient. It's the catalyst to make this really implementable, because if you have solar at your home and then you start to export into the grid, that energy, which the customer is being compensated at roughly 37% of the current retail rate, which is pretty high, and that could go into a storage resource to be used again in the evening or in the event of an outage to back up a given area. So we're actively working on engineering those solutions and implementing those solutions. Right now on St. Thomas, there's the East End substation. We're looking at putting 30 megawatt hours through the eGrid grant program onto that. We had a little bit of a submission review yesterday with some positive feedback from Housing Finance Authority that these are moving forward very expeditiously, that this funding was committed, that they have this, that they're moving forward. That gives us the ability to really back up 2 feeders that are about half of St. Thomas. So that potential is tremendous. And then we're starting to implement greater controls efficiency. So it's now about energy management as opposed to just generation. Yeah. We're always going to need that centralized generation in some capacity, but it's the ability to manage it, to have distributed energy resource management, updated SCADA platform within the utility, so that the plant operators can then forecast and system plan, and they can look ahead and they can say, what's our most cost-effective solution? What's our most cost-effective resource that we can implement? And then have a cascading event after that about this is the most efficient, this is the most reliable, et cetera. So you kind of put all those protocols together, and you're seeing the evolution of the utility. And implementing these demand resources or distributed resources, or even further, and this is going to take a while to get to, but in a virtual power plant. Peak of the day, A lot of people are working. You've got batteries at home. Discharge that battery. Shave the peak down. We've got 4,000 batteries. We've got megawatts of storage out there that we could discharge to help reduce the load. Again, that goes back into asset retention and management, reduction of fuel consumption, and ultimately increasing reliability.
But at least we're heading in that direction, so that gives us some hope, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's
Because it sounds great. Everything that
Yeah.
Walden is saying, it's the perfect scenario, and that's how the system should work. And it releases the load, from one area, and it distributes accordingly to
Right.
the needs that we have. And and that speaks about reliability, and it's what our people want to make sure that they have. And even in the business community, the business sector, I'm going to open the business. I want to make sure that I have reliable power. And unfortunately, our sister island over St. Thomas has been constantly experiencing those, power outages. We're hoping we're going to see that change soon. So that's the perfect scenario. That's the goal that the authority is going towards that. So
It's the brass ring, and
Yeah.
we're moving aggressively towards that. There's a tremendous amount of internal support. Access to capital, that's the scary part. But that's also a part of my role is to say the need is the need. Where we need to get to is what we need to do ultimately. Is there another way in addition to the existing resources? And that's a little more aspirational. That's a little more exploratory. But we're well underway to executing and seeing this as a reality within the next year and a half or two.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned earlier like people not really seeing or feeling that there's nothing happening, and ultimately, I don't think there's not the back rooms of e-grid application submissions isn't newsworthy, right? Like those aren't necessarily things that get press releases, but those are ongoing activities that are constantly moving towards getting to the mobilization of these projects, right? Like unfortunately, you mentioned earlier, it's not. There's no blank check out there, right? That's one thing. No matter how much federal funding we get,
yeah.
none of it is hand delivered as a check and then just go spend it. There is multiple tiers of review, approval.
Let's take a break
Yeah.
on that. But when we come back, we'll close that off. Let's speak about how the relaunching of the net energy billing program is assisting in this process.
Excellent.
We'll be right back. welcome. This is Analyze This on WTJX 93.1 FM, NPR station in the Virgin Islands. And this is your guest host, former Senator Samuel Carrión, filling in for Neville James. And with me this morning, we have Director Walden, and we also have Executive Director Fleming in the house. And they're talking about energy and the whole transformation of a whole energy system and how we have involved and where we are and all the funding we have received and the good things that are happening with it. But we know we also, not everything is good news. We had some bad news, and I wanted to also give the director a chance to maybe speak about some of the funding that we've lost. And why is that?
Yeah, so we did put out a press release at the end of last week highlighting the termination of our Solar for All grant. This was a federal fund of $62.5 million from the EPA. It was part of a national program, which in total was $7 billion. There was actually 61 awardees, 50 states, the territories, and actually some tribal nations as well were included in that. All 61 awards were terminated under the one big, beautiful bill. There was a lot of.
So it's a good point to mention. It wasn't only the Virgin Islands.
Oh no, this was a nationwide.
It's across the board.
Yeah, nationwide clawback of $7 billion, all under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund administered through the EPA. It was one of those funds that initially there was a kind of a target on it from the administration from Inauguration Day, but it had kind of cooled off, and I'd say we had some pretty good confidence that it was going to continue. And then, kind of out of the blue, after the passage of the One Beautiful Bill, it was subsequently terminated. But, in the lead up to that termination, there was a lot of work that was already underway. It was a very, given the size of funding, there was a lot of those, strings attached from the federal, process that we've discussed. So a lot of planning, we essentially had to kind of project out what the 5 years of the funding would look like and exactly the program design and how it would be implemented. And so a lot of that work was already underway within our agency. And we've actually, despite the loss of the funding, we've still been continuing the planning aspects. Even though that funding source doesn't exist, we intend to put 21 megawatts of solar, distributed solar, both on rooftops and community solar on the ground, 55 megawatt hours of distributed energy storage on the ground across the territory. That was the goal with the $62 million ceiling. And that gave us an opportunity to dream big, right? We never had funding like that we wouldn't even have thought about, how to plan out that type of funding because we never had it before. And, what the motto I've been taking is like, give us an opportunity to dream big, and I'm not quite ready to wake up yet. And so ultimately ensuring that we still have a plan for how, whether it's a federally funded opportunity, whether it's a privately financed opportunity or financing mechanism, laying out a sustainable distributed solar and battery adoption mechanisms for the territory. We're still moving forward with that. We're still taking that momentum. We had some other funding from the Department of Energy that had a similar scope that we've kind of reallocated to continue those planning efforts. We're actually we just engaged a company by the name of DNV Energy. They're a national engineering, major engineering firm out of the U.S. that does a lot of this type of not just the policy planning, but also the technical planning for the community solar microgrids that we were envisioning. And our goal is to have a playbook of what needs to happen. And ultimately, with that playbook in hand, we'll be better equipped to either leverage existing funds or be able to create bankable projects that can be tapped into other markets as well. So being equipped, I think, is something that this process has taught me, at least as a director for the Energy Office, is that the better equipped we are, we can take action whenever the opportunity presents itself. So that momentum is still continuing. So
I'm glad to hear that even though, funds were lost, you guys are still on track with the plan that you have.
Yeah.
And it fits in the overall territory's long-term goals. We're looking into 100% renewable energy by 2040. What's the goal?
The goal's been, I would say the goal has a bit of a moving target.
Okay.
We had a 2025, 15 or 60% fuel reduction in 2025 was put in place under the Eden days. I think it was under Governor DeYoung's administration. Vision 2040, I think it was 75%. don't want to misquote, but I know that there was a target. It wasn't 100% at 2040, but it was a pretty high penetration. But it certainly speaks to that, right? We already have a lot of projects in motion. The PPAs for the utility scale solar is already contributing significantly to that diversification of our energy mix and portfolio. We're probably going to be in a position to probably set some goals now that we have this pipeline of projects, both at the utility scale and then the growing pipeline of projects at the distributed level as well, to maybe set some realistic targets to hit. But right now, I would say I think 75 by 2040 is the one that's on paper through Vision 2040.
Good.
Which is going to make Energize very busy.
Keep you very busy, Director Walden. You'll be on your toes now.
Regardless of anyone's political affiliation, solar in the territory and solar around the rest of the world, our distributed resources, even if you paint the picture a little larger, is the trend. And it's continuing to thrive throughout the world. Even Saudi Arabia is putting up giant solar farms in order not to burn their resource that they'd like to sell. So, we're seeing the growth continue within the industry. We're seeing the implementation rates ramp up globally, just not in the United States at the moment. And so that does change the atmosphere a little bit, but the demand and the need, as I said before, still exist. And in our region, it's not diminishing; it's increasing.
Yeah.
So, talking about that, we mentioned before the break that we're going to talk a little bit about the relaunching of the net energy billing program. It's now under your brand, right?
Correct.
Within your office.
Thankfully.
So talk to us, how will that work out? We know we had some issues in the past with earned billing credits and, estimations in that regard, and some people not really getting the benefits that they should. So what can you assure the public that is listening, what changes we're going to see?
So the primary piece is that we are addressing anybody that is currently in the existing backlog. And let me point out, the difficulty is getting cross-department collaboration within the old platform, and that was the difficulty. There wasn't enough communication internally, and there wasn't any adherence from one level to the next, and it created a dissonance and a disconnect within the program that halted the forward movement. But all that information is valuable. All that information is still there. That platform, all the bones and foundation that were put together by the Energy Office are immediately accessible. And basically, we've tried to streamline some of that process, remove some of that interdependency between entities, and that's allowing us to do an intake process, a review process, a commentary process, an approval process, all the way down to the very final portion of the work order being released to meter services within Energize. And having that centralized will free up some of our engineering resources and allow us to directly engage with the community to start to eliminate that backlog. My department is very small, but my program administrator, who's been with me now for just 2 weeks, has already reached out to a little over 200 individuals in order to start to look at the backlog. Now, we have a subsequent kind of hole within the total program that we'll start to address next, and that's through the revised net billing application in the MyGov portal through our vendors mostly. And that kind of simplified application process allows us to have, again, that centralized review or that intake review, et cetera, through implementation, with the expectation that we're going to ramp up this process incredibly, and we're going to move this forward to eliminate the backlog. Now, the net billing program, everything will be done principally through the vendor, through the MyGov portal, which is the net energy billing application portal. But there's also a way to directly engage on an individual level if you've decided to take this challenge on yourself with your electrician at your home, and that's through the NEB apply at viwapa.vi. Anybody who has that information, you can go online to the viwapa.vi website, click on net energy billing. You can get a hold of the application. You can satisfy it through the checklist, everything on that application, and submit through NEB apply at viwapa.vi, and you'll get a response. If you enroll through that program and you have the valid documentation, which is not extensive, you'll get a response from my office within 15 days, and that will allow you to proceed. And we want this to happen on the front end of the process when someone's applying for the DPNR permit. We want to be engaged in this. We've had a disconnect there as well, where DPNR is thankfully allowing e-permitting, and I think that's been a boon. I think it's great. But at the same time, now people go, oh, well, I satisfied that. I don't really need to tell anybody else. Realistically, you really need to engage with the utility because we have issues. We have such a high penetration of solar energy, and we need to make sure that we maintain access for everyone. It's not to try to limit. It's to say, you can't export into the grid. You're burning up a transformer, and transformers are like gold right now. You can't get there. It's hard to come by running inventory just to have transformers on hand.
Yeah, especially with all the natural disasters we're having all around.
Right,
There's a high
right.
demand right now. Look at Jamaica.
Yeah.
So these are things. So we're trying to get involved in the front end of this process and make sure that we're executing, because the biggest thing we can do to restore faith is to have efficient, actively functioning programs with commentary and interaction with the community. And again, that also loops back into that informative piece. We need to play a greater role in informing and trying to help educate the public, and maybe make some work with the Energy Office to maybe allow some surge protectors to be implemented. Maybe we could do another version of I'm kind of riffing here, a revised version of the Vibes program, where maybe we could offer small battery backup, not on a transfer switch, maybe not something that we would use in a VPP, but something that would be small. You could help run a fridge overnight. This is all exploratory. I'm not saying this is something we're going to do overnight, but the idea is to think about this, engage the public and involve them, and directly address the concerns.
Beautiful. At least that's a start. So we should be able to see some improvements in that area as you move forward. Now you got a text here. I don't know if it falls within your division, but meters. Some people are saying they're waiting for meters. They've applied. I don't know if you have the information. Do we have a meter shortage? There's not.
Yes and no. Oh. Or I could do the engineering thing. It depends. So basically,
they've been waiting on a meter for a business.
So we've been buying meters really quickly.
Okay.
And trying to get as many meters as possible through a FEMA program. And again, this is also happening kind of hand in hand with the AMI program, which was just finalized, contracted. The IT department is working on the final networking piece, and that's the first end. You got to make sure that the network works correctly. Then you can start the meter implementation, and that should go pretty quickly. That should go pretty. I'd say within 2 years, we're going to see a territory-wide reformation of the metering system.
Good, Director. We have about 3 minutes remaining.
Yeah.
So I'm going to allow you to share your mind in your closing remarks.
No problem. Actually, I do.
It's better than the Senate. The Senate, they give you just 60 seconds. Right?
I think you're eating into my time, Senator. I know. Actually, I did have one thing I wanted to plug. We didn't talk a lot about electric vehicles today, but I did have one announcement to make on one of our programs. Our electric mobility rebate program is a incentive program that we offer for people who purchase new and used electric vehicles, both in territory, out of territory. Historically, it's been a $5,000 incentive. We promoted for a while the coupling of our local incentive with the federal incentive, which was $7,500. That federal incentive, as we were kind of talking about earlier, was one of the things that has been sunset by the current administration. That actually ended in September, at the end of September, the federal incentive. And in consideration of that, since we used to try to push for coupling those two incentives, we've actually increased our local incentive now that the federal one has sunset. So starting on November 3rd, which is Monday, we'll be offering a $7,500 incentive to new and used EV purchases in the territory, or either in the territory or out of the territory, vehicles that are registered in the territory. And so again, in consideration of the sunset of a federal incentive, trying to make sure that we're still lowering the cost barrier. And honestly, right now with the sunset of the federal incentive, there's a lot of lower price used EVs on the market in the U.S. That's kind of the surge in demand is now cooling off since the federal incentive has sunset, and we're certainly pushing for people to continue to, if they're interested, for anybody who has solar and you haven't been thinking about an EV, I think you're crazy. You've already committed to offsetting your utility costs. You
Just
should be
go
offsetting your
full.
fuel
Just
costs.
go full.
Utilize that solar energy to charge your vehicle. And we're trying to make sure that decision on the investment is a little bit easier with a $7,500 check in hand incentive if you do decide to make that electric vehicle purchase. So November 3rd, we're up at that, and all applications from then on will be for $7,500. So if you're on the fence, I'm trying to push you over.
Do they have to come before they purchase a vehicle or after they purchase a vehicle?
Once a vehicle is registered, so
Okay.
once you have once your vehicle is registered in the Virgin
Virgin
Islands, that's part of the submission. We will start the check. And you submit all other parts of the application eligible.
Used as well, secondary market.
Secondary market.
Beautiful. So, gentlemen, I
Yeah.
want to thank you both for taking out the time and being here this morning and sharing with our public what you guys are doing in your respective fields, in your office, in your area. So I hope to have you guys back. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Analyze This, which is aired every weekday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on WTJX FM 93.1, your NPR radio station in the Virgin Islands. And we have been honored to have these guests here this morning. This has been your former Senator Samuel Carrión, filling in for Neville James. It'll be until next time. All right, so have a wonderful, blessed
The
weekend,
views and
everyone.
opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.